Across parts of the Midlands and the East Anglia, but a lot of us, it's not going to be the most inspiring of starts to the new week, but it will still be fairly mild, a little bit cooler than it has been over the weekend thanks to a bit more of a northerly wind. And then going into Tuesday, still on the cloudy side across a good chunk of England and Wales with some further outbreaks of rain across the east. It does cheer up for a time across Northern Ireland and Scotland with some sunnier spells here, but then later on some further cloud and outbreaks of rain moves in across the far northwest of Scotland. Middle of the week, drier and brighter in the south.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom, and GB News understands that Russell Brand has been interviewed by police. A man in his 40s, believed to be the actor and comedian, attended a police station in South London on Thursday. He was interviewed under caution by detectives in relation to 3 non-recent sexual offences. The White House says negotiations to release hostages held by the Hamas terror group in Gaza are at a very sensitive stage. It comes as Israel's ambassador to the US told ABC News he's hopeful a significant number of hostages will be released in the coming days. Qatar, which is home to many Hamas leaders, has played a key role in mediation during the conflict. More than 200 hostages were taken by Hamas on the 7th of October. So far, 4 have been released. Elsewhere, people who live near new electricity pylons could stand to benefit by up to £10,000 over a decade. The government set to announce the move to overcome planning objections and speed up the approval of new energy infrastructure. Homeowners could get £1,000 off their household bills every year, though the Treasury hasn't specified where that money will come from. Minibuses and electric vehicles have been sent to Albania as part of a deal to return foreign prisoners. The arrangement will see 200 Albanian nationals, currently jailed in England and Wales, sent back home for the rest of their sentence. The UK has also agreed to help modernise Albania's prison system. The overall deal is expected to cost around £8 million, which the government says will save money for Britain's prisons. A ceremony was held at the Cenotaph in London today, commemorating the 102nd anniversary of the first wreath-laying by Jewish veterans. Service people and families of the fallen marched together down Whitehall to honour those who fought and served for freedom since the First World War. The first Star of David wreath was laid in 1921 by a group of Jewish ex-soldiers. This year's parade also marked the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and 70 years since the end of fighting in the Korean War. Now, finally, a hat once worn by Napoleon has gone under the hammer in Paris. Its new owner paid £2.1 million for the hat called a bicorn, which was worn by Napoleon during his rule over the French Empire in the 19th century. Napoleon owned about 120 hats, though the one worn by Joaquin Phoenix in Ridley Scott's epic new film is just a replica. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio, and now on your smart speaker by simply saying, play GB News. Now it's over to...
Cancel culture strikes again in the music industry. More anti-Semitism on the streets of the UK, and a politician receives her verdict in court after being prosecuted for quoting the Bible. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. This is the show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics, and of course we'll have the latest from those lovable culture warriors, unless they manage to get us cancelled before 9 p.m. Coming up on the show tonight, Finnish politician Päivi Räsänen has been on trial in a case which has major implications for free speech. The verdict is in. She'll be here to tell us what happened, and I'll speak to the band who lost out on a gig because of an interview they gave to this show, and they've been accused of transphobia, usual thing. Anyway, we'll be speaking to Dr. Peter Hughes, who has been writing about how excessive kindness to one group can mean cruelty to another. And of course, me and my fantastic panel will be answering questions from our delightful studio audience. So, my comedian panellists tonight are the wonderful Jojo Sutherland and Paul Cox. Welcome both. You come down from Scotland, Jojo?
I have. Well, no, I came from Liverpool.
Oh, you were in Liverpool. You're all over the place, globetrotter.
I am globetrotter.
So what's going on in Edinburgh? You told me there was something to be parking.
So Edinburgh Council apparently are going to make parking on pavements illegal, and so BBC Scotland phoned me and asked me what my opinion on it was, and I thought parking on pavements was already illegal. Yeah. Right. So my opinion is that until it becomes illegal, I'm going to start parking on pavements.
You really should, because it's tricky to park around there.
And it's also really expensive.
Really expensive in Edinburgh?
It is illegal to park on pavements in London. That's the only place it is illegal.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Ah, I did not know that.
Me either.
No? You've been to Edinburgh?
I have been to Edinburgh. Yeah.
You didn't know about the parking?
Didn't know, but never taken a car to Edinburgh, actually.
No, why would you? It's a beautiful place, by the way.
Yes.
Let's get some questions from the audience. We've got a question from Armin. Where's Armin?
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening. Are the civil servants running the show?
Well, I mean, we've been talking about this for a while on this show. There was a whistleblower this week. This was in the Telegraph, and a civil servant at the Home Office who claims that his colleagues are really, really happy this week because of the Supreme Court ruling against the Rwanda plan, the departure of Suella Braverman. But this whistleblower is also saying that whatever the government tried to do regarding migration, the Home Office, the staff of the Home Office will scupper it. Now, I suppose I should say, I can't verify the whistleblower. It was published in the Telegraph. I hope they've done their sort of basic verification checks. Presume they have. But if it's the case, irrespective of where you stand on the migration issue, isn't it a bit dodgy that the government would say, the elected government would say, we need to do this, and the members of staff would say, well, we're just going to find a way not to? Isn't that kind of anti-democratic?
Oh, completely anti-democratic. But then I think, I mean, when you see people being put into positions in government, you know, your Home Secretary one day, and then your Health Secretary, and then your Transport.
Yes.
I mean, they can't have that knowledge of everything. So there has to be a basis of staff that do have the sort of workings of that department.
No, that's right. And the staff should be able to work for whoever's in power.
Yeah.
That's sort of the point.
Yes, so the decisions should come from the elected representation rather than... Because I presume that the staff are there regardless of an election.
Well, no, that's exactly what it is. So that's the way... They're not allowed to be partisan.
Yeah.
But this is a weird thing, because we can't vote them out. We can't... That's what troubles me about this. How do we
No, maybe we should...
that's like the European Union, though. That's...
Well, exactly.
So you can't vote them out either.
Well, exactly. This is the problem. Or the House of Lords, or any of these things. You know, there's an issue, isn't there?
There's a huge issue. You know, there is a place for civil servants, and I've been a civil servant myself in the past.
Were you?
Yes, yes, exactly. Yeah, not for a very long time, but you are taught, or told, should I say, to be apolitical, and largely in the past, in my experience, people were. What they are not now is apolitical. They take their own views with them, and they make sure they're perpetuated throughout the system.
Isn't that strange? Armin, do you have any views on this, since you asked the question?
I just think people should learn how to do what they're told.
Do their job.
Yeah.
Steady on that. That's quite controversial. It's a bit dictatorship. Just do as you're told.
I am half German.
I've been trying that policy at home for a long time, and it's not working.
All right, well, let's get a question from Amelia. Where is Amelia? Ah, hello.
Are the pro-Palestine marches getting out of control?
Well, this is a question because a bunch of marchers stormed the Bullring.
Yeah.
Which, you know, well, isn't there a Harvey Nicks there or something?
Yeah.
So, presume they were just after some accessories.
Yeah.
What do you think about this sort of stuff?
Well, it's the sort of, you know, going into the Bullring in Birmingham and saying, you know, everybody right now stop, ceasefire. It's like, what, ceasefire in Birmingham? What? I don't know what... Where do you... Just shouting...
Actually, there's some parts of Birmingham where that would apply.
Maybe, but you're just going, what are you trying to achieve?
No, well, that's it.
Just...
And some MPs are getting nervous about this. I know one of the members of the Shadow Cabinet was saying, look, as MPs, we're a bit worried now because a lot of them are gathering around parliamentary constituents and sort of shouting and screaming, and it can be a bit intimidating.
Well, and that's the problem with anything, regardless of, again, what the subject matter is, just having large groups of people en masse being a mob is of course it's threatening. So, I mean, they're not going out handing out candles and back massages, are they?
No, they're not.
You know, so
I would be all for that.
I
think
would.
that would be great.
If I could just be mobbed by a sort of reflexologist, looked at them.
I would have a back massage for peace.
Quite a small mob, though, wasn't it?
Well, there was 100.
100 people in a shopping centre.
No, that's true. I think what people were saying, though, was that it was disruptive. But then protests are disruptive. I mean, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you do want... The right to free protest, I think, is absolutely sacrosanct.
Yes.
Yeah, but I also think...
And that's what we're good... There is a nervousness because of all the protests with Just Oil, you know, all the kind of protests going on. The psyche of the public are going, oh, God, can we just stop protest?
Well, that.
So we're kind of basically walking into, you know, kind of
but
going,
then,
let's ban protest.
But Just Stop Oil was smashing up paintings with hammers and stuff. That's not legal.
That's a different kind. But if we get so sickened by protests that we then actually vote to ban protests, then we're
no, that's going to be wrong. But then there's maybe it's about the police just applying the law. I mean, there are a number of the protests where you see openly anti-Semitic declarations. Yeah. You see people chanting about killing Jewish people. Why can't the police just intervene when people overstep the mark and let everyone else get on with it? Why aren't they doing that?
Well, that's a great question, Andrew. I think it's the question of the week, if I'm honest. I mean, I believe that protesting is sacrosanct also. However, I think it's almost redundant now in the sense we're in the age of social media. One of the protesters leading this march in the Bullring was saying, we just want to be heard. And you think, are you taking the what's it? Because we really hear you. We hear you a lot. There's nothing else we hear. And it's the same for Just Stop Oil. It feels a little bit attention-seeking, particularly when it comes to Just Stop Oil. I mean, they have done some absolutely atrocious things that have set their cause way
what do you
back.
think, Jojo, about like Just Stop Oil attacking works of art? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Depends what the art is, isn't it?
Yeah, it does really.
I mean, there's some you go on, yeah, get rid of it.
I mean, they did interrupt the production of Les Mis.
Again, I'm not bothered.
But if it had been, I don't know, like Sweeney Todd or Fiddler on the Roof,
absolutely.
if it had been a better musical.
So again, it's down to your own taste, isn't it?
No, absolutely.
But I think it's all the sort of the protest and it's like the football terraces, isn't it? Chanting in football teams and chanting songs. And
I think the interruption of theatre. Like I went to see Sunset Boulevard the other. It's such a good production, and I was thinking in my head, if one of those Just Stop Oil people, one of them interrupts this, I will take a flamethrower to everyone.
We would have seen Alpha Andrew.
It would have been pretty horrendous. OK, let's get to a question from Carl. Where's Carl?
Hello, guys. Is it acceptable for bullying on Women's Hour now?
100% every day of the week, yeah. Bully the women, that's what you want.
Women's Hour, of course, is it Radio 4? I think it's the Radio 4 show. And so this is...
Do you not listen to it?
You would. I'm the demographic, clearly. Well, actually, there is a point to this because the recent guest is a biological male who identifies as female, who is now running. Now I'm going to get this wrong. An endometriosis. An endometriosis charity, which is a condition of the uterus, right? Yeah. And
have you suffered with that?
No, I haven't. But because the individual who runs it now identifies as female, I suppose. They don't grow a uterus, though, do they? But the point is that Emma Barnett was saying to this person, well, look, because this individual, Steph Richards, was saying people assigned female at birth and kept talking about people assigned female at birth. And Emma Barnett, the interviewer, said, is the word you're looking for woman? And now people are saying that Emma Barnett was bullying a trans person.
Yeah, well, it's nonsense.
Oh, OK, we'll just...
End of story.
End of conversation. Let's move on. But why are public representatives of groups saying they can't have tough questions on radio?
Well, exactly, and that's the issue that we're...
And is it a tough question?
No. What we're sleepwalking into, being in a disagreement with somebody or asking, because you don't disagree doesn't mean you're bullying somebody.
No.
Do you know what I mean? So, I mean, the point, whether having a trans woman as a CEO of an endometriosis charity is an issue.
I've seen lots of debates online. A lot of women are not happy about that.
No, but equally they did point out that the CEO of prostate cancer is female. So something the female. So it's not as if you're best kind of talented to do the job. You get the best person,
that makes
regardless of gender. Remember?
Yeah.
So. But I think the problem is that the particular person in charge has got some kind of history of being quite a trans activist and...
well, even not using the word woman for that particular charity strikes me as something that would disqualify you from working for that charity. I take your point.
It annoys me.
No, I take... No, but I take your point about male, female. I suppose, if you're qualified...
Of course, if you're qualified, it doesn't matter of gender.
But this is not irrespective of gender, is it? Because this is someone who started out their life journey as one gender and has now transitioned to another. This is all about gender. The lady that's head of the prostate charity, it's great, we should probably have more women as CEOs, but she is a biological woman who's remained a biological woman. This is a biological man who has become a woman and is insisting on other people calling her a woman. And this is what happens when you remove bullying from schools, by the way, because we've now lost.
Wow.
We're now no longer able to identify what bullying is. Asking a question that you might not like is not bullying.
Is it not, Paul? Is it not? I feel very bullied right now.
Let's all get our flamethrowers out. Come on.
I feel very bullied.
Yeah.
Poor Emma Barnum. She was just doing a job, wasn't she?
Yeah. And I thought, I listened to the item, and I think she was a really good interviewer. She asked really good questions.
Yeah. Did it come across as aggressive?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. And I do like to play devil's advocate, and it's that sort of thing of going as a woman. I have no problem with a trans woman being the head of. If I suffer from endometriosis, I wouldn't mind. I don't care who's in charge, as long as they know how to treat the condition and can help to make things better.
Does it bother you if they can't use the word woman?
Is it can't, though? Of course it does bother me, can't use the word woman, but are we saying they can't use the word woman? They're just using different terminology to a degree.
Yes.
But if we're getting rid of women, of course I'm going to start a protest and go in the bull ring with my uterus.
I don't think we're quite getting rid of the word woman yet. But oh my goodness me. The imagery has gone very graphic all of a sudden. Let's get a question from Shirley. Where's Shirley? Hi, Shirley.
Has the Supreme Court got a problem with Rwanda?
Yeah, this was interesting because obviously we've had all these developments with the Supreme Court, but now a spokesperson for the Rwandan government is saying that the Supreme Court is insulting Rwanda by saying, you know, this is an unsafe country to send people to. The Rwandan government is furious because they're saying, no, we have incredible facilities, we know what we're doing this for ages. Paul, have they got a point? Is this racist?
They do. OK, so if we start at first principles here, the Supreme Court, it's not their opinion, they're using the British law that's available to them.
Fair enough.
And they can't make a different decision, whether I agree with that or not, and I don't happen to agree with it. I think we need third-party immigration countries to help us out with the load that we've got at the moment. However, if this was a left-leaning policy, without a doubt, we would see this as racist, without a doubt.
Really?
But this is coming as a right-leaning policy. We're saying, you know, we want to remove certain immigrants and take them to a third-party country. And therefore, they're quite happy to say it's not on the left.
But this is difficult because left-wing activists now will say that it's about the lived experience and perception of the individual. So if a person of colour says that they feel it's racist, then it is. So the Rwandan government's saying, well, so why are the left marching about this?
I'm just really uncomfortable with the term lived experience because we've all got a lived experience, but the only thing that anchors us, the baseline that anchors us, has to be the truth. So there is only one version of the truth. And
you really haven't met any of these actors?
Yeah, I have met. I'm speaking.
Whose truth?
Well, exactly, just the truth. It's not. We just. That's why we set out laws and rules and boundaries of debate, don't we?
Oh, you're so old-fashioned. Listen, Jojo, isn't it? I mean, it does put some of the activists in a bind. You know, they hate the Tories and they hate their Rwanda policy, and they say they're being racist by sending them to Rwanda. But now Rwanda is telling them they're being racist by not sending them to Rwanda.
Yeah.
So you kind of.
I think they should all have a drink and calm down.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
That's probably it.
But it is that thing. But when it gets into the letter of the law, it's regardless of principle.
Yeah,
the law is the law.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? The law is black and white. There's no emotion in law. Unfortunately, we seem to be using emotion to change the laws because of people's feelings.
Yeah, and look, you can't please everyone, or in this case, anyone. Well, OK, anyway, next on the programme, Finnish politician Päivi Räsänen has been involved in a court case which has major implications for free speech. That's the one where she quoted the Bible and landed in court. Stay tuned to find out what happened.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Are Queer, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new
It's your new
I
t-shirt.
don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Finnish politician Päivi Räsänen went on trial in August after hate speech after publicly expressing Christian beliefs. Päivi was charged with agitation against a minority group back in 2021 for sharing her beliefs on marriage and sexual ethics in a tweet 2 years earlier, as well as a live radio debate and 2004 church pamphlet. So the verdict is now in. I'm joined by Lorcan Price, legal counsel for ADF UK, and hopefully Päivi will be joining us down the line in a moment. But in the meantime, welcome to the show, Lorcan.
Thank you, Andrew.
So could you explain to us, for those of us who have no idea about what's going on here, what is the background to this case?
Well, as you say, in 2019, Päivi tweeted criticism of the decision of her church, which is the Finnish Lutheran Church, to sponsor the Helsinki Pride Parade. And she said that essentially, why would they use church funds to do that? And she included in her tweet a picture of scripture. And as a result of this, somebody made a criminal complaint to the police. They then opened an investigation into her. They went into things she had written in 2004, so nearly 15 years prior to that, where she talked about the purpose of marriage in a Christian context between a man and a woman that would not include gay marriage. Again, that was in the context of a debate that was going on in the Finnish Lutheran Church at the time. And because of those two things, they brought criminal charges against her.
Just clarify for everyone, because the accusation was one of hate speech.
That's right.
What was the Bible quotation that she included, and why was it so hateful?
Well, it was from Romans, and the Bible quotation uses strong language about man shall not lay down with man.
I'm familiar with the verse, yeah.
So the problem with that is that somebody took offence to it.
Yes.
But it's in every Bible in Finland and around the world.
Well, in the world, I would say,
exactly
yeah.
that. And you can find Bibles in libraries and churches and so on. But it was the fact that she tweeted it with a criticism of her church's decision to sponsor the Pride Parade.
And then the pamphlet, that was to do with the debate over gay marriage.
Yes.
Now, how was, no, not that this should be relevant because I believe in free speech no matter what you say, but was she saying her view was that gay marriage is not compatible with Christian thought, or was she saying that gays are evil and should be, thrown into a volcano or something?
Absolutely not. No, she was saying it's not compatible with homosexual behaviour as such or within marriage.
Right.
And so her distinction was that Christians believe this is a sin, but that you should love the sinner, which is what Jesus Christ said when he was here preaching. And it was exactly what she said Christians believe. And she goes out of her way in the pamphlet on a number of occasions, and in fact the prosecution was forced to admit this in court, to say that every person has dignity, equal dignity, they should be respected, discrimination, unlawful discrimination is wrong.
Yes.
But Christians believe this, and they believe it for these reasons.
So this does sound like pretty standard Christian beliefs. It doesn't sound like it's been framed in a particularly hateful way. Why would that be subject to a criminal prosecution? I think a lot of people watching be very confused by that, because you can't prosecute. Would we prosecute every Waterstones because they've got copies of the Bible on sale? What's going on here?
Well, this is precisely what confused us, and it's only when you look at who made the prosecution decision, who was then the chief prosecutor, a lady called Raija Torvajanen. She said quite publicly that as far as she was concerned, Finland was suffering from an epidemic of hate speech, and that while you were entitled to believe what it says, and this is a quote, in the Bible, the Quran or Mein Kampf, you weren't necessarily entitled to say that out in a hateful way.
So she actually put those three texts together as though they're comparable?
Correct.
I mean, isn't that hate speech?
Well, it shows a deep ideological position on the part of the prosecution services. And that should concern all of us, irrespective of what European country we're in or what country we're in. Because if you have vague laws plus an ideologically motivated prosecution service or any institution, then you come with these type of outcomes.
So she wasn't promoting the idea that they should change the law to make homosexuality illegal?
Certainly not.
Or anything like that?
So, no, nothing like that.
So this is so confusing. So it goes to court anyway, she's prosecuted. What's the verdict?
Well, we had it in the Helsinki Criminal Court 2 years ago now, and it was unanimous acquittal. The prosecution then have the power, strangely under Finnish law, to appeal a not guilty verdict. So they appealed it to the Court of Appeal. And then just there this this month, we had another unanimous not guilty verdict. So she's been put through 2 rounds of court proceedings, years of this case dragging on, over 15 hours, in fact, of police interrogation.
Yes.
And all to arrive at the conclusion that was obvious to anybody paying attention that she wasn't engaged in hate speech.
So is this the end of it? Because you say that now the appeal has been found that, again, not guilty, unanimous. Can they try again?
They can, actually.
Really?
They can take it to the
Can they just do
Supreme
this
Court.
endlessly?
Well, and that's a very interesting question. I mean, these guys will reach the end of this process with an appeal to the Supreme Court, and if we're acquitted there, that will be the end of it. If we're found guilty there, we can then bring it ourselves to the European Court of Human Rights. So we'll have to wait and see. So but the process itself is a punishment.
Yes, of course.
You're sending a message, and this is quite deliberately, I think, what the Prosecutor General was doing here, to everyone in Finnish society. Päivi is a well-known public figure. She's a politician. If we can drag her through the courts this much, we can do it to you as well, so you better stay quiet.
Yeah, now, I was in Finland quite recently giving a talk, and I didn't realise the extent that these kind of critical social justice, woke ideology has taken hold in Finland. And a lot of people that are very, very... Liberals are very worried. They're saying this is a disaster for our country, this authoritarian movement that's sweeping through. Have these hate speech laws always been on the statute books, or is this a relatively new development, or are they just being applied with greater force given the ideological bent of those in charge?
Well, they came in 2005, and interestingly, Päivi was actually a politician who voted for them when she was in Parliament.
Is that right?
She'd never believed they'd be used in this kind of way. So it goes to show you kind of unintended consequences. But they were introduced in 2010, and since then, we've seen a new prosecutor come in, who has since left, actually, and she has used them in this kind of weaponised way I described. The reason they're there is this is Finland taking its obligations from international law on hate speech into domestic law.
Right.
So, and the UK has the same obligations in international law, and we have very concerning laws in this country, as you know well.
We do, and they're getting worse with Scotland introducing their hate speech laws. The Irish hate speech bill is an absolute disaster for free speech, but that's a good example. So with Ireland, a lot of critics are saying, well, this will be weaponised by activists to effectively criminalise anyone who misgenders someone, who likes to use pronouns according to biological sex, not some sense of a gendered soul. Now, that's a real problem, but the Irish government is saying, no, that would never happen, don't worry, just put it on the statute books, it'll never happen. But this case of Päivi, she thought it wouldn't happen, she voted for it, and it did happen. Doesn't this show the danger of putting such vague, nebulous terms like hate onto the statute books without any definition at all?
Absolutely. Unless you've already guessed, I'm an Irishman. I've been in Dublin speaking to members of the Parliament about that piece of legislation. It's deeply concerning. The then Minister for Justice in Ireland said that the reason they had left a kind of an open-ended category around gender was to, quote-unquote, future-proof the law so that new gender identities that are discovered in the future would also be protected by the hate speech law.
That's astonishing.
It's
but didn't they also say, when asked to define hatred, well, it means hatred? It was a circular definition.
Correct, yeah.
Right. Well, this is absolutely absurd.
It means that you're left in a position where you never know whether or what you're saying in a group to your friends, in a public setting, wherever, whether or not it actually crosses the threshold into hate. So the prudent decision would be then say nothing.
Exactly.
Don't get into controversy.
And of course you don't know what the views of a future government might be, how they might choose to interpret hate. They could interpret criticism of the government as hate. What do you do then? I mean, this seems to be an obvious problem to me, but it's not one that people are... I mean, a lot of the people who are would be supportive of what the government did to Päivi aren't really thinking in terms of how the legislation might be used against them one day.
Exactly. I mean, you can totally disagree with what Päivi said, but if you have to take the risk then that a future government may not take a very different view about your own position and then decide to prosecute you. Giving institutional power to ideological prosecutors with vague open-ended laws is a recipe for disaster for everybody, irrespective of where they stand on different issues.
Lorcan Price, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it. Thank you. So I'm afraid we couldn't get Päivi down the line due to technical difficulties, but I think Lorcan fills in quite adequately. But next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be speaking to the band Whom by Fire, who found that one of their gigs was cancelled for the heinous crime of appearing on this programme. I feel very bad about that. See you shortly.
We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So later in the show, I'll be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel, Jojo Sutherland and Paul Cox, and we're going to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. So if you've got any problems at all, trust us to answer them, really do. Just email us at gbviews@gbnews.com and we'll do our very best to not destroy your life. Southend-based band Whom by Fire first appeared on this show back in July to discuss how they were cancelled from the Lee Folk Festival, apparently for questioning the sexualisation of children in schools online. That appearance itself has had repercussions, though, and the band then found themselves cancelled by a church where they were due to perform an evening of music. So here to tell me more, I'm joined by band members Eliza Mells and Dan Halamandres and their friend and promoter, Nathan Duquette. So I'm going to come to Whom by Fire first. Now, you were on the show in July, and you explained what happened, but maybe just explain again. You were supposed to perform at the Lee Folk Festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were, and we were informed that due to social media comments that we weren't going to be welcome there. And
but they weren't specific. You were raising concerns about the sexualisation of children in schools, right?
Yeah, it was. I raised a particular concern about a certain book reading that Southend Pride were promoting, which advocated for paedophilia. It wasn't an over-18s event. I thought it was a fair enough thing to question.
Yes.
And nobody's denied that that's what it was about.
My understanding is that you had seen some previous posts by one of the organisers which suggested a kind of tolerance for that kind of thing, and you were criticising it, right? And that's
essentially that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's wrong with that? Would be the
Love
first
to
question.
know. Love to know that. If anyone knows.
But did they? And then they just cancelled the gig, right? Did they tell you? Did they give you a solid reason?
No, just went against their ethics.
How? I'm not sure how.
Yeah.
I think it was because they were inclusive.
They were being inclusive. So it sounds to me like the kind of situation where they don't really understand what you were tweeting about, and they thought you were just attacking that particular event, something like that. But even if you were, we do live in a society where we do have free speech. We can express views that people disagree with. That should be okay, shouldn't it?
It should be okay.
I think so.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So you weren't able to play. Then you came onto this show, and then they were annoyed about that. And so who cancelled you this time?
A church.
A church?
A local church that we've played at before, who've welcomed us with open arms, and this
so what
time...
does it, what, am I the Antichrist or something? What's going on here? This is ridiculous. So Nathan, you were involved in this. Well, they tried to... You're a singer-songwriter as well.
Yep.
You've performed together, but you were organising an event, and these same activists contacted you, is that right?
So I had a few messages back and forth, which I chose to ignore.
Yes.
Basically saying either cancel the gig or remove my friends from the lineup. It was us guys.
You were sharing the bill.
So I put the night on. I asked Swoon by Fires to come and play because they're amazing. And the pressure was put on to say either remove them and just do the night on your own or cancel the gig. I chose to ignore. They went to the venue. The venue said nothing, as they should.
So but did they come to you because they feel, because you're a trans person, they thought you might share the animosity against them? Is that maybe what it was about?
I think they were probably trying to put me in a position, their pride. I might fit into one of their letters, and so as such they wanted to share the same views as me, and that's not what I felt was right.
That's kind of the problem that I feel. You know, I'm constantly told I'm part of this LGBTQI community, so therefore I must agree with everything that everyone else says. But we're all individuals within that, and we all disagree on stuff, and that's fine, right?
Exactly. It's like if we're going to cancel everyone with an opposing view, all of us would be cancelled.
Well, of course. So, but also in terms of artistry, I mean, you're all musicians. Now, I know quite a lot about the history of the arts and music, and there are a lot of really bad people, really bad artists who produced incredible work. Should we really be policing the moral views of the people who produce art?
No.
Well, it's a simple question and a simple answer.
Yeah, sorry, but that's...
But why do you think this has happened? Why is this going on at the moment? Any thoughts? It's a big question.
It is a big question.
Nathan, do you have any ideas?
I have a feeling social media might play a little role.
Really?
That's my opinion, yeah.
Well, it does seem to get people riled up, doesn't it? Yeah. Have you had any problems with social media? Have people gone after you since this thing happened?
I think I was compared to Hitler.
Yeah. You were compared to Hitler? Dan, that's nothing. I mean, I get that every day. It doesn't mean anything. But did they give you any sense of why appearing on this show in particular would disqualify you from performing at a church?
Well, we've had a few things this week, actually, just that GBNews is far right.
Far right, yes.
I mean, that's news to me, and I work here.
So we have to disassociate ourselves from GBNews as a result of
I think supporting anti-trans, anti-woke, which I support, actually.
But I mean, that's just a misunderstanding of what's... I mean, this is often the case, that a lot of activists make a decision about what's going on the channel, and then they just say that, but it doesn't bear any relation to what actually happens on the channel. We have discussions and open debate, and I think that's what they're probably afraid of, isn't it? When they emailed you, what sort of tone did they take? Was it a kind of demanding tone, or was it just a polite request?
I would say it was quite demanding, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And what would they have been happy with then? Just for you to capitulate, I suppose?
Just to do what they were asking me to do, which again is making me a yes man.
Yes.
I'm kind of not happy to sit and do that.
And so you just your strategy was to ignore, rather than do anything else. Okay, that's very interesting. But that's probably the way to do it, isn't it? Yeah, that's great. Do you have any recourse? Because presumably this is a private venue. You know, I suppose they get to decide who performs at their venue. Is there anything you can do? Is there anyone you can complain to?
Yeah, we are making complaints, and we're talking to the church as well.
Yes.
We're going to be in communication with them quite heavily on this matter, because I think the whole church thing, for me personally, has cut deeper than the Leigh Folk Festival.
Really?
Because,
Why is that?
Yeah, I was brought up in a Christian household. I've been a Christian for many years.
Yes.
And so the fact that this has happened from, you know, a church,
yes,
it's not the God that I'm kind of used to that
I understand. Well,
is doing this. It's
But it doesn't sound very inclusive, if
No,
I may say,
it's
if I may use their word.
Yeah.
And it'd be interesting, you know, if you want me to talk to them, it'd be interesting to see what they think is far right about me or the station, given I've never even voted Tory. I don't know how they would. I don't know how they would square that, really. Have you any thoughts of why they've got this sense in their head of?
It angers me. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Exactly what you said about inclusion, right? We're now excluding people under this guise of including people. And for the church to do that says a lot.
Have you found any? Has this happened to you before, or have you had any sense that this is happening more in the industry? Because it did happen to Roisin Murphy, for instance, when she posted something on her private Facebook page. It wasn't even for public consumption, and then it was largely attacked and misinterpreted and all the rest of it. Is this a broader problem within music?
I think it is going to become more of a problem. It seems like it's on the up and not in a good way.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, I do hope you're able to get through it and do something more. Tell me a bit about your music and what you do.
Yeah, well, it's obviously very political. Not in the slightest. It's all about love, redemption, freedom.
That sounds quite controversial to me.
All of our gigs, everyone is actually welcome as well.
They are.
And, you know, nobody is normally injured or hurt at them.
But that's the strange idea, isn't it? This idea that if someone doesn't agree with you about something, it's essentially harmful to even be in their presence. That's the odd thing.
That's awful.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
And is this I mean, the church hasn't got a great track record if you go back centuries. we could potentially cancel them, you know. I'm just saying. I don't want to give anyone ideas, but I think that's possible. And what I would love to get is a representative of the church to come on the show and have a chat with you about it.
That'd be incredible.
Well, I'm going to extend that invitation now. I'm not going to hold my breath, but if you do want to come onto the show, please do. It won't be combative. We'll just have a chat about that because I'd be very interested to know what people thought about it. So anyway, Nathan, what about you? What about your music? What's your style?
I would say it can be a little bit sad, but with a nice little glimmer of hope. Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, we
Nothing
need that
controversial.
at the moment.
Nothing controversial.
OK, well, look, I really appreciate you all coming on and discussing this because I think this is happening too often now. And I mean, final question. What is the way out of this? Because it does seem like, to give the example of Roisin Murphy, when she was cancelled, very few people within the industry said anything. A lot of people felt a bit scared, as in, if that happens to her, that might happen to us. That's understandable, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So then how do you break through that and get people to talk more about it?
I think you need to, first of all, support people that don't necessarily... You don't necessarily agree with everything they say, but are speaking out and, you know, agree to disagree with them and just definitely don't apologise if you haven't done anything wrong.
I think that's a really key idea. I mean, we were just talking about a Finnish politician who's been prosecuted for quoting the Bible because she believes that she doesn't believe in gay marriage. Well, I disagree with her, but I know that if I don't fight for her right to say that, it'll come back on all of us, right?
Exactly.
It is kind of the same thing, isn't it? It's a broader problem at stake here, isn't there?
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you all so much for coming on. It's been really fascinating to hear about your story. Whom by fire, everyone. We're joined by Dr. Peter Hughes, a philosopher and author who's written a book about how excessive kindness to one group can mean cruelty to another. See you in a moment.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Has kindness become cruel and divisive? Well, that's a theory being advanced by Dr. Peter Hughes, a philosopher and author, who has written this week about how acting with extreme kindness to one group can lead to acts of cruelty towards another. And I'm delighted to say that Dr. Peter Hughes joins me now. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So, Peter, where does this theory of yours come from?
Well, it comes originally from the work of a Polish psychiatrist called Andrew Lobachevsky. He wrote a book when Poland was under a communist occupation called Political Ponerology. That's Ponerology, and that means the theory of the origin of evil. And what really fascinated him was how what he called a pathological minority, a minority of people who were narcissistic, grandiose, but mediocre, and believed in themselves way beyond what their competence would dictate, took it upon themselves.
I know a few people like that.
But they took it upon themselves to decide what people could think, what people could do, what people could say. And he was fascinated by this. He wrote this book in collaboration with other psychiatrists. They threw one copy of it on the fire when the secret police came around, just in time. They smuggled another one out to the Vatican, which got lost. And then eventually he recovered it from memory and rewrote it from memory, missing a lot of the statistical data. But the basic points he made were true. And what I'm fascinated in is how a pathological minority can come to power, can hold power, when the majority of the people do not believe in what they're saying. In our case, what we've pathologized in our society is kindness.
So there's something very interesting about this idea of, I've seen kindness and being a victim weaponized. So that effectively the assertion of victimhood becomes a means to bully others and to cudgel others, which sounds counterintuitive, of course, but we see it all the time. So we see it among activists, we've seen it on the streets of London, we've seen people chanting for effectively genocide and death of Jewish people. and saying that they are victims, and that's why they're doing it. What's going on there?
Yeah, well, because what you do is you have a strong allegiance to your in-group, and that means you have a strong aversion to your out-group. And the more depth and virulence you support your in-group, the more likely you are to be violent to your out-groups. Let me give you some examples. We had a case recently, obviously, in the wake of the Hamas atrocities in Israel. We've had people tearing down posters of children who've been taken hostage. We've had universities making statements condemning Israel with no mention of Hamas whatsoever. We had yesterday a student in I think a Canadian college called Durham College, saying that she supports Hamas fully and believes they should do it, in her words, again and again and again and again. And it's all done in the name of kindness for the oppressed. So once you divide the world into oppressor and oppressed, the righteous and the unrighteous, the sinful and the blameless, then you can unleash unlimited cruelty.
But is it just because they have sort of, these things have become abstractions to these people? You know, they're not there on the ground seeing the, you know, children being burnt alive, seeing people being raped and tortured and murdered. And so, therefore, they can see this as something that's happening far away, and they can sort of, I suppose, romanticise it and change it into something that it isn't.
But it's slightly different from that, because the psychology, and what makes it such a catastrophe, really, is that the psychology of it is very robust, because they're really talking only to themselves.
Yes.
And what they're doing is that one person who believes in this type of pathological kindness will connect very well with somebody else who doesn't. Whereas for the mass of ordinary people, they have a very different understanding of kindness. We understand kindness as being giving to someone who has a need, who might be in trouble, who might be struggling, regardless of what their belief is. One of the foundational stories for our own civilization is the Good Samaritan.
Yeah.
And of course the Good Samaritan is someone who comes along and helps someone who's been robbed and attacked, even though they come from different social groups. And the Samaritan is the exile, the other, if you want. And these acts of kindness, which ordinary people engaged in, are being demonized because they're not using the correct language.
But it is baffling to me. You know, we saw that activist at the Trans Pride rally calling basically the crowd to punch women who disagreed with them and getting a big cheer. Right now, what's going on there? Because these are a group of people who are saying they are demonised and victimised, but they are the bullies, quite clearly, in that situation.
Well, Lobachevsky estimated about 5 to 6% of a population, he called it the pathological underbelly, will drive these ideas.
Right.
But what they do is they pathologise normal people. And everybody else gets pulled into this catastrophic world.
OK, that's interesting. So it's a minority.
So it's a minority that drive this. It's not a majority.
Well, I was going to say, because with all the death threats and rape threats that go towards J.K. Rowling simply for having an opinion that most people hold, and for a very compassionate opinion as it happens. Now, it would never occur to me that I can't think of any scenario where I would behave like that, and yet you see these thousands and thousands of people doing that. I can't think of any scenario where I would attempt to defend terrorists like people are doing. So is it just, it's not that we've suddenly got sociopathy on a widespread level?
No.
It's not that.
No, it's not. I think it spreads and people can ally themselves to this pathological minority, but it's a minority that drives it. So if you look at the situation with Hamas, for example, Hamas went into we don't need to go into all the details about what they did, but we know how horrific and horrendous it was.
Yes.
And that is the pathological minority. These are people who are jihadists who will stop at nothing to erase Jews from the face of the earth.
I don't believe their supporters could do that.
But not only could they not do it, they couldn't even watch it.
No.
But yet they will cheer. They will say, yes, let's do it again and again. OK, then, here's a cudgel, here's an axe, here's a knife, do it. Well, I couldn't do that. So the way to counter these people, if there is a way to counter them, because they've got so deep in our society into the bureaucracies that govern our institutions and our corporations, but you have to isolate the pathocrats, because most people just want to get on. Most people understand empathy. Most people are capable of looking at other people and seeing them as a fellow human being, as a fellow sufferer.
It's about reclaiming one's humanity,
reclaiming one's humanity and one's collective humanity from the pathological minority.
So finally, because we don't have much time, but there is nothing new about this insofar as if you go back to the Inquisition, the people who were strapping those individuals to the rack and torturing them, they did think they were doing it for God. They did think they were on the side of the angels. It's perfectly possible throughout human history for good people to do the most horrendous things.
Horrendous things. But what makes a tyranny of kindness so dangerous is that people can punish other people, the out-group, endlessly, take great pleasure in it, and still remain virtuous.
Yes.
And that is truly terrifying. And that is where we're at. And we have to understand the tyranny of kindness is also a tyranny of virtue, which, interestingly enough, we remember the Republic of Virtue at the end of the French Revolution, which is what Robespierre and his fellow revolutionaries saw as the end point of the French Revolution. And where did that end? It ended in bloodshed and the guillotine. And that is where we're headed unless we isolate these pathocrats, reclaim normal kindness from its pathological underbelly, and reclaim words like love, hate and kindness for the mass of people, of normal people. One final point is that, and Lobachevsky makes this really well, he said the only crime that normal people commit, which makes them punished so much for their views, is that they're not psychopaths. And normal people aren't. Ordinary people are decent.
Well, they might. Just very quickly. I believe in the decency of humanity. I absolutely do. But then I see these marches, and I see most of them are not chanting anti-Semitic chants or engaging in that kind of thing. But they are turning a blind eye when other people are. That's what disturbs me. That makes me think that it's become so normalised in that movement. How do you reach those people? I couldn't walk past someone calling for genocide and ignore it. I don't know how you reach that point. And once you've reached that point, isn't it a question of de-radicalisation rather than persuasion?
It is a process of de-radicalisation, but de-radicalisation is simply one form of psychological realignment. When what you're doing is you're enabling people to see that they've got this virus in their heads which is driving their behaviour, which is against their interests and is against the interests of all their fellow human beings, including those closest to them. Nobody wins in this game. Nobody at all wins, because where it ends is in chaos and bloodshed. And who's going to gain from that? No one.
Well, I think it's absolutely chilling stuff. Dr. Peter Hughes, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. Well, that was a fascinating conversation. There is a lot to think about and a lot to reflect on in terms of what's going on in our world at the moment. But there's a lot more to come tonight on Free Speech Nation. We're going to be exploring some of the themes that were raised in that last interview. We're going to be asking why young left-wingers have started praising Osama bin Laden, of all people. And we're going to be doing our cultural roundup with David Aldroyd-Bolt. And me and my panel are going to be getting some more questions from this absolutely delightful studio audience. Please don't go anywhere.
Hello there, welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. We're looking ahead to the new working week. It's going to be a bit of a grey and damp start out there. For some of us, it will turn dry during the middle part of the week, but then a good deal colder as we head towards next weekend. Back to the here and now, we've still got this area of low pressure close by. Still got some tightly packed ice bars down towards the south, so indicating another blustery night. Also keep an eye on this area of rain as it moves across parts of South Wales and southwest England. Could turn quite squally for a time as that moves through. Elsewhere, a good deal of cloud around, clearest of the skies over towards the east, but for most, as we start Monday morning, we start off on a fairly mild note. So that band of rain will continue to clear towards France as we go in the course of the morning, so maybe a bit of a wet commute for some of us, but for many, it's going to be a bit of a grey day with some further outbreaks of rain. It may well turn briefly sunnier for a time across parts of the Midlands and the East Anglia, but a lot of us, it's not going to be the most inspiring of starts to the new week, but it will still be fairly mild, a little bit cooler than it has been over the weekend thanks to a bit more of a northerly wind. And then going into Tuesday, still on the cloudy side across a good chunk of England and Wales with some further outbreaks of rain across the east. It does cheer up for a time across Northern Ireland and Scotland with some sunnier spells here, but then later on some further cloud and outbreaks of rain moves in across the far northwest of Scotland. Middle of the week, drier and brighter in the south.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, including some questions from the audience for me and my panel, Jojo Sutherland and Paul Cox. But let's get a news update first from Tatiana Sanchez.
Andrew, thank you and good evening. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The Israeli military has released video footage of what they say are hostages being kept in Al-Shifa hospital. IDF spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari gave his nightly presser this evening, in which he alleges Hamas have hostages trapped inside of the hospital. He said one is from Nepal, one is from Thailand. They were allegedly taken from Israel on October 7th. It comes as Israel's ambassador to the US told ABC News he's hopeful that a significant number of hostages will be released in the coming days. Well, GB News understands that Russell Brand has been interviewed by police. A man in his 40s, believed to be the actor and comedian, attended a police station in South London on Thursday. He was interviewed under caution by detectives in relation to 3 non-recent sexual offences. Now, people who live near new electricity pylons could stand to benefit by up to £10,000 over a decade. The government is set to announce the move to overcome planning objections and speed up the approval of new energy infrastructure. Homeowners could get £1,000 off their household bills every year, though the Treasury hasn't specified where that money will come from. Minibuses and electric vehicles have been sent to Albania as part of a deal to return foreign prisoners. The arrangement will see 200 Albanian nationals currently jailed in England and Wales sent back home for the rest of their sentence. The UK has also agreed to help modernise Albania's prison system. The overall deal is expected to cost around £8 million, which the government says will save money for Britain's prisons. A ceremony was held at the Cenotaph in London today, commemorating the 102nd anniversary of the first wreath-laying by Jewish veterans. Service people and families of the fallen marched together down Whitehall to honour those who fought and served for freedom since the First World War. The first Star of David wreath was laid in 1921 by a group of Jewish ex-soldiers. This year's parade also marked the 80th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising and 70 years since the end of fighting in the Korean War. And a hat once worn by Napoleon has gone under the hammer in Paris. Its new owner paid £2.1 million for the hat, called a bicorn, which was worn by Napoleon during his rule over the French Empire in the 19th century. Napoleon owned around 120 hats, though the one worn by Joaquin Phoenix in Ridley Scott's epic new film is just a replica. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car on digital radio, and also on your smart speaker by saying Play GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So let's get some more questions from our lovely studio audience. Our first question is Alex. Where's Alex? Hi, Alex.
Is the term coconut a racist term?
Yeah, this is interesting. This was a marcher at one of the protesters had a sign which had Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman depicted as coconuts. And, of course, the phrase, we can actually see that on the screen right now, and, of course, the phrase coconut has been used often to describe people from an ethnic minority group who are perceived as being sympathetic with white agendas, that kind of thing. A lot of people consider it to be a racist term. I think the police are looking into this one. What do you make of it, Jojo?
Well, again, it's one of those things, isn't it? It's like context is key.
Yeah.
So, do you know what I mean? I think in that environment, then you could be led to believe that it was very racist, but...
Well, I mean...
But it's how it's received.
But isn't there also something...
What do you think? You think it's racist?
Yeah, what do you think?
Well, I think that fundamentally implying that being white is a negative could be seen as racist in itself.
But in addition to that, aren't they suggesting that Rishi Sunak and Suella Braverman, because they're Conservatives, that they shouldn't be Conservatives because they're not white? Isn't that quite racist towards them as well?
Yeah, I think it works on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem... I just think steer clear of racial slurs when it comes to arguments. I mean, it should be that simple, right?
Yeah, it's irrelevant, isn't it?
Of course it is, yeah.
It relies entirely on their race, the coconut, the same as gammon does in many ways. Don't know, open that bottle of worms, but I don't know if you get worms in bottles. I mean, I've seen it, but yeah, it is. It relies entirely on race, so therefore it is racial in its very core, and it is irrelevant to the argument, you know. And the idea of someone being sympathetic to white causes. I mean,
what are white causes? I don't know what that means.
I know, but see, this is the problem. It's like, what are we talking about? Do you know what I mean? It's like we have this sort of idea, go, oh, it's racist, and it means that it's like, what are you saying?
Well, it's about sort of compartmentalising everyone, saying all white people are this, and all brown people are this, and all black people are this, and it's just really regressive.
Yeah,
it feels
really,
like kind of undoing all of the sort of positive work of civil rights.
And completely sort of going against the idea that, you know, it shouldn't matter about the colour of your skin or your religion. Do you mean it's that simple?
It's really grim, isn't it, seeing that sort of thing on a protest? Anyway, OK, we're all pretty unanimous on that one. We're going to move on to a question from Alan. Where's Alan?
Hi there, guys.
Guys, really?
Oh, sorry.
You've misgendered Jojo.
I'm so joking. Last week, when there was 3 guys, I called them all ladies. So when J.K. Rowling said, "Oh, I'll go for 2 years in prison for misgendering," so
yeah,
please excuse
Don't
me.
worry about it, Alan.
No,
What's your question?
My question is, well, that my honorary president of the party that I'm standing for happens to be in Australia at the moment.
Right.
The question is going into the jungle a smart idea for political people?
And you might be talking about Nigel Farage.
I am.
You are talking about...
Yes.
And, of course, he's doing that jungle show, isn't he? What do you think about that?
Well, I haven't watched it, but I will now. It's going to be fascinating. But, well, I believe he's doing it to appeal to the younger side of our community who may not have heard of Reform UK and Nigel Farage.
Well, Alan, we do actually have a clip of the kind of thing that he's going to be doing. Let's have a quick look at this.
Hello, Jay.
Tree! Tree!
Tree is correct!
Oh, hello. Here's your mate here.
That's your time started.
Oh, mate. Yeah, bugs.
Bugs?
Bugs.
Is correct. Is correct.
So, Nick, a star will lie down. Oh, you just got to take it off with your mouth. Right.
All right, I'm very confused. But it's interesting what you say, Alan, about, like, Nigel saying he wants to reach more young... That's actually what George Galloway said when he went on Celebrity Big Brother.
Yeah, oh dear.
It was the same idea. And it kind of worked, or did it work, or did it kind of backfired?
Not when he ended up pretending to be a cat.
No.
I mean... Yeah,
which is all we remember, isn't it?
No, that's true. We remember the cat with Rulenenska.
Yes, no, absolutely. But it's like anything. I think all of these programmes, like Celebrity, Strictly Come Dancing, whatever they're called, they all want... Whoever's going on them has a goal that they want to... You know, there is a reason that they're going on it.
Yes, at least he's being open about the reason.
Yes, so...
was that Matt Hancock's reason? He wanted to be rehabilitated, didn't he?
Yeah, and he thought he could show his fun side.
Didn't work.
But no. Well, but it did.
Well, did it?
Did. Well, it did, because people were like, oh, he was really fun.
But then it generated a lot of resentment as well. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Now, because the show, you have to eat bugs. I haven't seen it. I've seen clips of it. But you eat bugs and you sort of sleep in a tent.
Yeah, eat a bit of rice.
I mean, it just sounds like Butlins, to be honest.
The only time I feel it's the only time I feel intelligent around you, Andrew, is when we're talking about popular culture, and I feel like I can at least work on the same level as you with this. That jungle show,
I think
eating bugs.
You're far above me on this.
Well, thank you. But yeah, of course, exactly that. It's like the freak show, isn't it? It's like, I mean, one thing I will say about Nigel Farage is, whether you like him or not, of the 21st century, he's probably the most prominent and arguably the most successful politician. So when he does something like this, it brings my judgment on it into question, because I think to myself, well, if he thinks it's a good idea, maybe it is. Because he's got a lot of things right over the years in terms of making decisions about political matters, and he wants to reach the younger generation. I'm still not convinced this is the right way to do it, but it does keep him in the public eye.
A lot of people watch it, don't they?
Yeah,
Would Strictly Come Dancing have been a better idea, maybe?
I don't know, but I think what will happen, because the British public are inherently sadistic, is that he will get voted for every single trial.
So the public vote for the trials?
The public vote for the trials. So 100%. The year that Gillian McKeith did it, kept fainting, they kept voting her in.
Well, even though she was upset about it?
Yeah.
Or because she was upset about it?
Because she was upset. So
wow.
It's another form of bullying, completely. It's just as bullying people. So he'll get voted for everything. But equally on Twitter, I know they've changed their name, but we still call it Twitter.
Yeah, of course.
It's called boycott celebrity. So
boycott celebrity?
Boycott celebrity. So people are...
Why?
Because Nigel Farage's on it.
Well, which is ridiculous.
But what people do is they'll do that, hashtag boycott celebrity, and everyone will watch it.
Because people forget that Twitter is not real life.
Yeah.
No one cares about what these activists say on Twitter. It's not like a hashtag's going to shut down the show.
Yeah.
That's
more people will watch it. Loads of people watch it.
Jesus.
All right. Well, let's get a question now from Vicky. Where is Vicky? Hi, Vicky. Hi.
Hello. My question is, will the war in the Middle East be the end for Joe Biden?
Yeah, a lot of people think so, because wars are normally good for sitting presidents, but he is being criticised an awful lot, isn't he? And also, you know, obviously, America has always taken a very pro-Israel stance. The activists who are supporting the Democrats don't take that stance. It actually puts him in a difficult position, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to outlive the war anyway. If the war lasts any longer than about 6 months, I think he's in trouble.
Goodness me, Paul.
But one thing I will say is this is such an interesting position for Biden to find himself in, because people, I was saying this earlier in the week on Headliners, people who tend to lean hard left will choose anything that's anti-American and go on the opposite side. And you're seeing that sort of popular movement with the Osama bin Laden love letter to America from 2002, the way young people are picking that up. But Biden would normally, he's been trying to convince people he is on the left of politics. I've never really been convinced of that. But he also has to support Israel. It's just the way... So that if you're an American president, you have to.
Yes. Yeah. So that, and similarly, people have made the claim that Labour could suffer for the very same reason, that a lot of their core support is from the pro-Palestine and supportive of the pro-Palestine marches. But of course, Starmer is not taking that view, or what view is he taking is kind of difficult to know. But it does put certain types of politicians in a difficult...
Yeah, but again, it comes back... I mean, war is good for a lot of people in power because it makes them a lot of money, so...
It does, but it's bad for others.
Yeah.
I think
war was good for comedians because we used to do the decompression gigs, and so...
Oh, really?
Yeah, you make a lot of money.
But do you think the reason that...
Get in there.
No, fair enough. The reason that Biden, though, is... It's not so much Israel, as far as I can see, it's the fact that he can barely speak. Isn't that part of the issue?
Well, he can't barely speak, and he struggles with stairs.
Yes. No, he genuinely does.
He needs a centre lift.
So they've actually got a translator for his meeting in China who's going to just weed out the gaffes. as they go along. That's his job. I mean, that's insane.
It comes back to that question again, you know, that war is good for certain politicians, but what is about the whole kind of getting to the principle and getting to the understanding of peace rather than, oh, this is what we always do? Do you know what I mean? So...
And that's the problem with ideology, isn't it? That's why Keir Starmer's actually playing a pretty good game on this at the moment in terms of the ceasefire, because he's using some pragmatism and standing back, because he knows he has to appeal to the blue/red wall. And those people like things like truth and honesty, and they think that killing babies is bad.
Maybe his best bet is to actually just hide in a basement like Biden did for the whole election.
That was true.
Because it won it for him, because he just didn't do anything. OK, right, we're going to move on to a question from Marcus. Where's Marcus? Hello.
Hi. Do you think that Glastonbury Festival is now no longer worth it?
Oh, how very dare you!
So Glastonbury sold out in under an hour. That was this morning. It went online. Are you a Glastonbury fan?
I am, yes. I used to live down there. I've been to the festival. I do like music, but I think it's no longer worth it.
Oh, really? But you used to live actually nearby?
I used to live in the town, yeah.
Yeah, so you may as well go along with it at that point.
Well, I got a free ticket.
You got a free ticket?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Ah, OK.
But why do you not think it's worth it?
Because I got a free ticket.
Oh, right.
No, it's commercialised. It's no longer about the music. It was once about summer solstice, but it's just gone Mean Fiddler, and it's all about music.
Is that right?
Yeah.
My issue is just sleeping in mud, and I'm not into that.
That's pleasant.
You quite like that?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's got some sort of detoxifying properties for the skin. I don't know, but would you go to one of these festivals?
Well, so I have nothing to compare it to, but I did my very first Glastonbury, the cabaret tent, not last year, the year
And how was
before.
that?
Absolutely loved it. It was honestly, so because I'm from Edinburgh, so the Edinburgh Festival, people always say it's an incredible festival and you can't really understand it till you've been.
Yes.
And I never had that experience because I grew up there, so the festival was always there. But Glastonbury, it was the noise, the sound, the smells. It was over sensory. I felt like a kid in the playground.
Because I've performed at a festival. I was at Latitude.
Yeah.
And it's not like a normal gig because people aren't totally listening. Maybe that was just me.
Yeah.
But they were mostly drunk
I've never seen so many middle-class white people out of their depths on drugs, to be fair.
Well, there's that. Exactly.
That's pretty much Glastonbury in a nutshell.
They're not the ideal audience, are they? Really? Not the ideal audience. Would you ever perform at one of those sort of?
I have performed at festivals.
Yeah. Do you like them? I didn't like it.
My experience has been mixed. There was one this year that I won't name. Because, you know, they paid me, and I'm all up for being paid again. But it wasn't... It's a difficult environment to be a stand-up comedian because you don't necessarily get 100% attention, and you do need it.
You do. I mean, they're well paid, but I did feel halfway through like I should have just bought a ukulele and cracked on.
But I think, Marcus, as well, because you've got the history of Glastonbury and you can compare it to... Do you mean we all love to reminisce and go back and go, oh, it's not like it used to be. I'm like that with the Edinburgh Festival.
Yeah.
But I think like I say, the first time I went, I was like... It was amazing. It was incredible. So I think the next generation, maybe we just pass on the baton.
Yeah, all right, maybe. OK, well, look, next on Free Speech Nation, I'm going to be asking why left-wing kids are turning to Osama bin Laden, of all people, as a role model. And Professor Robert Toombs will be here to discuss why Oxbridge Dons have been accused of white domination. Don't go anywhere.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So, who are the heroes of young left-wingers these days? Che Guevara, Karl Marx, Jeremy Corbyn? No, apparently it's Osama bin Laden. This week on TikTok, videos of young people celebrating the virtues of Osama bin Laden have been going viral, and all because they've suddenly read his letter to America. That was a piece that was published on The Guardian website in 2002. Now, The Guardian has since removed the letter, which isn't the best approach because it lends a kind of weird credibility and glamour to the nonsense that he was spouting. But, as you can imagine, in the letter, Osama bin Laden argues that it's all the West's fault and he had no choice but to murder thousands of civilians on 9/11. In fact, he claims the right to murder civilians and very specifically mentions Palestine as the justification. He's also clearly obsessed with Jews, using the word 10 times in this very short letter, in phrasing that, let's be honest, is reminiscent of the kind of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories found in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. So Osama bin Laden writes, "The Jews have taken control of your economy, through which they have then taken control of your media and now control all aspects of your life, making you their servants and achieving their aims at your expense. And," he wrote, "your law is the law of the rich and wealthy people who hold sway in their political parties and fund their election campaigns with their gifts. Behind them stand the Jews who control your policies, media and economy." It's what you might expect from an anti-Semitic mass murderer. And yet the kids love him. So let's have a look at what some of them are saying.
Everyone to stop what they're doing right now and go read. It's literally 2 pages. Go read A Letter to America. And please come back here and just let me know what you think, because I feel like I'm going through like an existential crisis right now, and a lot of people are. So I just need someone else to be feeling this too.
I need you to stop what you're doing and go read A Letter to America.
It's wild, and everyone should read it. If you haven't read it yet, read it.
This letter was insanely eye-opening. I really urge everybody to Google and read it.
Go read A Letter to America. Like, seriously, go read it. Type A Letter to America in Google or whatever you use, then come right back. Because this makes a lot more sense. It explains so much, and I guarantee you it's going to blow your mind.
This is pretty grim stuff. So TikTok has been frantically removing the videos, and as usual, when material is suppressed, it's become even more popular. And actually, we do need to see this because we need to understand the extent of the problem. Firstly, there's the issue of history. Now, many of these young people have been taught by activist teachers who have willingly twisted aspects of their history for their own anti-Western agenda. Historical revisionism is now the norm. Look at the 1619 Project, for instance, which tried to rewrite the story of the foundation of the United States. I mean, that won a Pulitzer Prize, but was plagued with factual inaccuracies. Even their own fact-checkers raised concerns. And just today, it has been reported in The Telegraph that the prestigious academic journal History and Technology published an unsubstantiated claim about Henry Cort, the 18th century ironware producer, saying that he didn't invent the iron-making process he has long been credited for, but that he stole the idea from Jamaican slaves. But when academics pointed out that there was simply no evidence for this claim, the journal's editors claimed that the article's critics were taking, quote, narrow approaches to colonial-era sources and were engaging in, quote, particular race relations by taking the view that facts are facts. Well, facts are facts. Now, if it turns out that the article is correct, that's fair enough. But the editors are wrong to simply assert that something is true and then dispute the importance of factual analysis. And of course they're doing so because this particular article is an article by an activist that is calling for reparations. So there's an agenda there. And this is because ideologues from the critical social justice movement, what most people call the woke movement, are not interested in truth. Indeed, they consider the very notion of truth to be a white, Western, heteropatriarchal construct. They say there are multiple truths and that we should prioritise lived experience over verifiable reality. And that's the lesson that the TikTok generation have taken on board. So if they feel that Osama bin Laden was a decent guy and that the 3,000 people murdered in the Twin Towers were in fact colonisers who were complicit in the Western imperial project, then it must be true because they feel it. In other words, historical illiteracy has been rebranded as virtuous. And it's not just TikTok. We've even seen some people on these marches that really don't understand the situation. So here are two protesters that have been chanting from the river to the sea, but they don't really understand the implications.
Do you know which river and sea they're talking about, by the way?
I don't know the name. The river, I know the Mediterranean, it would be the sea, but no, I wouldn't know the river, no.
Okay,
that's it, yeah.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And here are two protesters who then are not even familiar with the attacks by Hamas on October the 7th.
Hamas invaded Israel on the 7th of October. What was your initial reaction to that?
I don't believe they did today, Hamas.
I think so. Honestly, I think I need to be a bit more clued up on everything that's going on. So I feel like I'm not really qualified to answer that too well.
I mean, I'm not sure if I've seen anything that shows that that's actually happened or actually correct.
So it isn't just that these kids know nothing about history. They don't know what happened last month. And of course, this is really dangerous stuff. We've seen explicit anti-Semitism on the streets of London, and not just in London, but elsewhere around the country too. So here are some protesters in Luton issuing a chant, which is the first verse of an anti-Semitic chant about the massacre of Jews by a Muslim army at a battle in the 7th century. Let's have a look.
Heiba, heiba, ya Yahud! Heiba, heiba, ya Yahud! Jaysh Muhammad sa Yahud! Jaysh Muhammad sa Yahud! Heiba, heiba, ya Yahud! Heiba, heiba, ya Yahud! Jaysh Muhammad sa Yahud! Jaysh Muhammad sa Yahud!
So a chant on UK streets invoking the massacre of Jews. And we've also seen protesters calling for jihad, intifada, even one claiming that, quote, Hitler knew how to deal with these people. It's an actual quotation from a protester, by the way. Jewish schools have been forced to close, Jewish people have been openly intimidated, and all in the name of progress and peace. Well, actually, what you're seeing here is fascism. And you don't have to read Mein Kampf to know that Hitler wasn't a great fan of Jewish people. But with all the attempts to rewrite what actually occurred during that horrendous genocidal terrorist attack on October the 7th, it's starting to become clear how Holocaust denial happens, because we're seeing it in real time. Activists have spent years imagining fascists in every shadow, claiming that we live in a Nazi country, and they've now gone completely silent about open declarations of fascism on our streets. And some are even supporting Osama bin Laden. And if you think they couldn't sink any lower, I promise you, this is just the beginning. Now, as I mentioned there, the academic journal History and Technology has claimed the 18th century ironware producer Henry Colt stole his idea for an iron-making process from Jamaican slaves, but some leading Oxbridge historians said there was no basis for the claim, only to be accused of white domination. So joining us now is a leading historian at the University of Cambridge, Robert Toombs. Welcome to the show. Can I first ask you about this article? It's making some unsubstantiated claims, and critics have pointed out that these claims are unsubstantiated. What should the editors be saying to that kind of complaint?
They should be saying, we've investigated, we found that the claims made in this article were unsubstantiated, and therefore the article is going to be withdrawn. It should be an apology for having published an argument that simply has no basis in fact, has no basis in evidence. But what they've done instead is think that they can just brazen it out under a sort of, smokescreen of verbiage. And as you say, by playing the race card.
Well, they're suggesting that they're even calling into question the idea that saying that facts matter, that would be a problem when it comes to historical investigation. Why on earth are they doing that?
Well, empiricism is a colonial construct, is more or less what they say. The facts are what we say they are, because we're in the right and you're in the wrong, because we are modern and you're old-fashioned, and because we stand for the global South and you stand for white domination. I mean, for me, and I think for many people who are historians, whether Henry Court or slaves in Jamaica invented this process is not of any great importance, although the author of the article has, as you said, used it as an argument in favor of reparations. I mean, if it was slaves who invented this process, I'd say, wow, that's really interesting. Let's look at the evidence and see. But the fact there is no evidence. It's been carefully examined, and it's just a succession of maybes and perhapses and wouldn't it be nice ifs. It's really basically that. And to say that
historians would be more than happy to change their minds if new evidence were to emerge.
Well, certainly I would hope so. I don't see how one could not. Historians spend all their time trying to interpret evidence. That's what we do. And if someone comes up with new evidence and an exciting new interpretation, then most people say, wow, isn't that great? But in this case, you just have to say, well, the emperor's got no clothes on, and this just doesn't make any sense. And the worrying thing, I think, is not particularly this claim. Young historians can make excessive claims. It's not uncommon. I may have done it myself in my younger days. But to say, well, we don't really care. We don't care whether the evidence is there or not, because we know that we want this to be true, and therefore it is true.
Now, I've spoken to other historians who've said to me that they feel that within the discipline of history generally, this is creeping in more and more, that people are actually considering their own ideological wishful thinking, I suppose, to be more important than the facts. How widespread do you think this really is?
It's quite widespread in certain areas. I mean, in most history, it's not really a presence. But in certain areas, particularly concerned with global history, the history of empire or post-imperial studies, in that sort of thing, it's become the norm. You won't have people who work on the history of the First World War or the Wars of the Roses or the Roman Empire doing this kind of thing. It's particularly in those areas which are so ideologically potent and controversial that this happens quite commonly.
Yes, I mean, one of the ones we've heard a number of times is the notion that Winston Churchill was responsible for the Bengal famine. And a lot of the people making that claim tend to omit an awful lot of evidence in order to make that claim. Do you think at any point they reflect and think, well, if I'm having to fabricate things, maybe I'm wrong?
I think in this particular case, it's mainly the product of Indian or Hindu nationalism. I don't think there are serious historians, certainly not serious historians of Churchill, who believe this, because, as you say, once you start researching this subject, you realize that it's an awful lot more complicated than that. So, the people who say, oh, well, Churchill deliberately starved 20 million people to death are just saying, I don't understand what this is all about, but I've heard somebody say this, so I'm going to say it as well.
So what do you think can be done? I mean, this is a broader problem in academia more generally, where the idea of a lot of activists, well, I suppose academics who are activists first and academics second, have an awful lot of clout and sway. Isn't this only going to get worse?
Yes, I think it probably is. And I think the reason is that academic careers are now largely determined by the ability to raise research funding and, of course, by the ability to be published in journals like this. And therefore, you know what it is you have to say in order to get money for your research, to get promotion or to get a job, and to get yourself published. It's becoming more and more dangerous for people to go against the established orthodoxy, which is becoming more and more the sort of orthodoxy that this journal embodies.
Robert Toombs, thank you ever so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
And next on Free Speech Nation, it's going to be time for our monthly culture roundup. We'll be discussing the Mongol Khan show at the Coliseum and Ridley Scott's new film, Napoleon. Don't go anywhere.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. It's time now for our monthly look at the culture and the arts. And as always, I'm joined by historian and broadcaster David Oldroyd-Bolt, everyone. So, David, so I want to start by discussing the Mongol Khan show at the Coliseum. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes, this is a big spectacle that's coming to London. It started on Friday, it's running till the 2nd of December, which is telling the fictional story of Mongolia 1,000 years before Genghis Khan, Cengiz as they call him. And it's a spectacle of acrobatics, of song and dance, of great acting. It stars all of Mongolia's
We're seeing some of the pictures there on the screen right now.
And it's interesting not only because it's a brilliant spectacle that you take all the family to see, but because the Chinese authorities in the capital of the Inner Mongolian province in China banned it from being performed in September. It was supposed to have a 6-day run. On the night of the production's opening, apparently there was a power cut to the theatre. All the actors and the cast and the production staff were held in the theatre. They were then held in a hotel for 6 days before being bussed out of the province by the Chinese authorities.
Well, that's what happens with power cuts. It's very normal.
It's extraordinary.
Yeah. So what is their objection?
This is part of a programme, really, that the Chinese Communist Party has been putting into effect over recent years to try to eradicate Mongolian history and culture from the province of Inner Mongolia. There are more Mongolians in the Chinese province than in the country of Mongolia itself.
Right.
So since the beginning of the year, for instance, school classes and in Inner Mongolia have had to be taught in Mandarin rather than the Mongolian language. The Chinese authorities are trying to suppress any evidence of Mongolian culture. For instance, when this show was being rehearsed in the Hohhot province, they were forbidden from wearing Mongolian costumes while doing so, because it's an outward sign of their pride in their history and culture.
Yes, well, the revision of history for ideological purposes, who'd have thought that?
It's extraordinary.
It's sort of going on over here as well, a little bit. Let's move... By the way, that's at the Colosseum, is that right?
This is at the Colosseum in London. It's running until the 2nd of December. I saw some of the previews. I'm going to see it tomorrow night, and it looks like a really extraordinary show. And I think, given that it's 60 years this year since the initiation of cultural ties between Mongolia and Great Britain, it'll be a really timely thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And your second story tonight, David, is about Ridley Scott's new film.
Yeah, so Ridley Scott's gone on record as saying he doesn't really care what the historical facts were relating to Napoleon, and he's just going to make a film that he likes. And he's totally ignored the truth of Napoleon in order to concoct his version of it.
Now, I haven't seen the film Napoleon, but what are the most egregious historical mistakes?
Well, for instance, he has Napoleon firing a cannon at the Sphinx, which didn't happen. He has a Napoleon and Wellington meeting on HMS Bellerophon in Plymouth Harbour. Wellington never went to Plymouth Harbour, and he certainly didn't meet Napoleon on board the ship. He has Wellington saying that he'd never been to St Helena when Wellington stopped at St Helena on his way to India. There are just massive, glaring factual errors.
So the question then, David, becomes about artistic expression, doesn't it?
Well, this is it.
Do you think that... So let's take, for example, a film like Braveheart, where William Wallace has a sexual liaison with Edward II's wife, whereas in history she was 10 years old at the time that he died.
Yes.
So if that did happen, it's a dodgy thing. Now, are they fair? But they had an artistic reason for doing that. They wanted to stir up this sense of personal enmity between William Wallace and the King.
And
so
that's,
that was an artistic choice.
part of the Hollywood myth-making, I think, that that is obviously part of the fiction of the film rather than being purported as historical fact. I think the problem is that Ridley Scott has said that he doesn't care. He said that, you know, nobody is around now who was around then, so we couldn't possibly know the truth, which is just wrong. We have thousands of first-hand accounts of what Napoleon was like as a man, how his campaigns proceeded, who said what to whom and when, and we have them from all sides, from the pro- and anti-Napoleon side, as it were. So it is not as though there is a lack of historical fact on which to base a film. Scott's just decided, Sir Ridley, we should call him, sorry, that he doesn't care and that none of us should either. Now, I think this is wrong in an age when, say, 50 years ago, or at the dawn of Hollywood's golden age in the 30s, when historical epics were being made and they played fast and loose with truth. This was also an age when there was wide historical literacy.
Yes.
And the teaching of history in schools was much more rigorous and factual than it is today. So if you went to see, say, Errol Flynn's Robin Hood, you knew that probably nothing had happened and that this was a fiction.
Yes.
Whereas if you were to see the Kevin Costner, or a more recent version, I think there's one in 2008, I think as gradual historical literacy has eroded, the onus is greater and greater on people like Sir Ridley Scott to stick to the facts.
I take that point. I mean, I've even heard people... I remember seeing Shakespeare in Love and hearing someone say, well, that's a good theory. And you think, well, no, it was all nonsense.
Yes.
You know, and you weren't meant to treat it as anything other than that, I don't think.
Yeah.
But so you think there's a genuine danger that when a historical epic is put out and it purports to, or at least it gives the impression of relating the facts accurately, that it has a responsibility morally to do so?
I think it has a responsibility to stick to facts where we know them to be facts. Where it is a matter of interpretation, and of course you can have eliding of characters because you've only got to say 2 or 3 hours in which to make your story. So if you put 2 people together who were historically real in order to get across the fact, then that's one thing. But willful distortion of facts, willful misrepresentation of historical figures, as Sir Ridley Scott seems to have done here according to what's been reported, is, I think, something we should be worried about, because it strikes at the heart of the responsibility that comes with the freedom of speech and expression, which is a responsibility, as you were saying in your previous segment, to truth, to objective fact. This is not merely a matter of interpretation. These are things that occurred. These are things that real people said and did, and therefore it's the onus is on the creative director, in this case Sir Ridley Scott, to portray that accurately.
I suppose he might say, well, it's so long ago. I mean, people get very upset when films are made about recent events and things are changed, but they might say, well, the past is, you know, it's a foreign country and we can play around with it.
There.
Yeah, you know, we can play with the various things, but if it's more exciting to add elements that didn't happen, what's so wrong with that?
Well, I think the problem is that it misleads. And if everyone was sitting down every night with, say, Andrew Roberts' 1,000-page or Adam Zamoyski's slightly less weighty book on Napoleon, in order to compare what they were seeing in the cinema with what actually happened, then that would be fine. But I don't think, I hope I'm mistaken, I don't think most people will be doing that.
Maybe they should have a test before you're able to watch the film.
Yes, exactly.
That you've
An
read
entrance
the book.
exam for the cinema.
Yeah.
Like the 11 plus, really.
I think it's going to catch on, David. Thanks so much for joining me tonight. Really appreciate it. So next up on Free Speech Nation, Paul Cox and Jojo Sutherland will be back for some social sensations and unfiltered dilemmas. Don't go anywhere.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. So, it's time for Social Sensations. That's the part of the show where we look at what's been going viral this week on social media. And first up, David Cameron is back. And the Tories announced his surprise appointment as Foreign Secretary in typically bizarre fashion, as this YouTuber pointed out.
Firstly, David Cameron is back in government, do with that what you will. But secondly, why has the official Conservatives account, like our literal government, tweeted he's back with a flame emoji as if he's a villain reprising his role on EastEnders? He's back, he's promoting British interests around the world. He's about to get in a fist fight with Phil Mitchell. We live in hell.
Quite an extreme reaction, but honestly, David Cameron, just when you were worried the Tories might have run out of ideas, you know?
I think they have.
Yeah.
I mean,
David Cameron.
It does seem. It does seem
he
odd.
disappeared. It seems odd. I can only assume that he was in Rishi Sunak's ear. He was a bit of a mentor to Rishi Sunak in the background, and that he thought it was a good idea. Maybe a distraction.
But I thought he'd gone into hibernation after Brexit.
He had. He skulked away,
This little
didn't he?
piggy went wee 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 all the way home.
No, let's not get into that. But I mean, what on earth is going on? Are they going to bring Tony Blair back? And
Well, I thought he is back. Is he not coming back with the ID?
Yeah, he keeps popping up.
He keeps giving us, unsolicited advice.
Have we not moved on?
Tony Blair's never gone away. David Cameron, I don't know. Perhaps he's been cryogenically frozen for the last.
Maybe. How depressing. OK, next to Good Morning Britain and an entertaining spat between Ed. Sorry. The Ed Balls, sorry. I don't know why I stumbled over that word. Had a small spat with Owen Jones. Let's have a look at this.
The vast majority of the media is supporting what Israel is doing and refusing to call out war crimes. That's a fact. If you don't like it, it's a fact.
Yeah, can we put some of these points to the Shadow Health Secretary we're streeting, who is waiting very patiently?
Intellectually second-rate.
You're just so childish.
Can we not?
I mean, look. That's a pure ad hominem. I mean, that's not what you should say in an interview.
It was totally unnecessary. I mean, I agree with him.
But that's not the point.
It's not the point.
It's really not the point.
It was the passive-aggressive, catty way that he did it as well. He gave him no option. He did it to camera, like he'd turn from him
so he
to
couldn't
read
reply.
the Yeah, he just couldn't do anything. And I think it's below Ed Balls to do something like that.
I mean, I think so. I mean, I interviewed Owen for a show, and he just shouted at me the whole time, basically. He wasn't very polite. But the thing is, I still wouldn't do that to him. I wouldn't start just slagging him off there on live TV. In fact, like, why would you? Because you're not going to... For a start, that's not conducive to... sensible adult debate, is it?
It's not conducive to debate, is it? And it's slightly childish, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like Tig. Like, yeah, Tig you, got you.
Yeah, and particularly the way he did it, just before cutting away. I mean, so I think we're all agreed that was wrong.
Yeah, I think GB News could be a safe space for Owen Jones.
I would love Owen to come on this show and have a debate. I would love that.
I would love it too.
Why is he scared to? Why wouldn't he? I think this whole principle thing, isn't it?
I think because he's part of that sort of activist contingent of journalism who feel that to even appear on GB News dignifies it in some way. But, of course, the whole point of the channel is we have multiple voices debating different ideas.
No, absolutely. And we still give me a hard time. Going, what are you doing going GB News?
Really?
Like, well, you pay my bills then.
Well, exactly. Well, quite. Exactly.
You give me the money that GB News pays you and I won't go.
But let's see if they take you up on that,
no, Jojo. They won't.
OK, well, next, we've all been there, haven't we? You're working out. The camera is all set up so you can post the footage on Instagram, and then someone walks past and gets in the way. Take a look at this.
Here I was recording my leg stretch session for the past 15 minutes, and this lady chose to squeeze between a narrow space and walk across my video, despite having a bigger space to walk through on the other side. Mind you, the space between me and my phone is not that wide, and it was obviously set up on a bright pink Hydro Flask.
I just don't understand the TikTok generation.
When you say it was obviously set up on a what now?
I don't know. I have no idea what she was talking about.
No, exactly.
But it's the narcissism of this. Like, I don't want to... Who wants to see that?
Nobody.
Who cares?
Yeah, nobody cares. And people... But that's the thing. People think that people do care. So...
But the thing is, if I put footage of me working out on my Twitter, I reckon that would get retweeted quite a lot.
My daughter lives in Dunfermline. I stay with her in Scotland, and she was laughing at something. Now, as comedians, you put out content, you try to film clips and put it out, and make sketches and work really hard to kind of build your social media profile. And I said to Kira, I was like, "What are you laughing at?" She went, "I'm watching jars going down steps." I thought, see if they break in the bottom.
Yeah.
And you just go, why am I bothering? Do you know what I mean?
That's what you need to do.
People are watching jars going down steps, see if
the things that do really well are just inane. You should just put jars.
Yeah, I'm thinking about doing it.
Jars. I mean, what do you think about this, Paul?
I mean,
would you do that? Because I know you're a gym bunny, aren't you?
Yeah, well, as you can see, everyone can see my body is somewhat sculpted.
Temple.
Much like you, if I did that, then I think there'd be quite a few viewers for very different reasons. I mean, have you seen anything more entitled than that, apart from the last video that was exactly like that a couple of weeks ago?
Well, that's the weird thing. They're all so entitled. And even the TikTok videos where they're lecturing their audience about something, they're so kind of arrogant. It's unbelievable. It's never crossed their mind they might be wrong. you know, you've got to do this, you've got to listen to me. And they always do that upward inflection at the end.
Yeah, we at least our generation had the opportunity to be young and arrogant away from a camera lens.
That's the point. That's true.
Away from social media.
Yeah.
They're essentially just... We probably were just as full of our own self-importance.
Yeah, but nobody got to see it.
No,
yeah,
thankfully.
it's all been buried in the...
You could deny it as well. If there was someone who did remember it, you could say, no.
Oh, no,
That's gaslighting, isn't it? That's what that is.
No, thank God. I mean, if I was just speaking my mind online when I was a teenager, I wouldn't be sitting here now.
No, me either. No.
I'd be in prison, let's face it. OK, so now this is the part of the show where we talk through your unfiltered dilemmas, and our first dilemma has come in from Spencer. Spencer says, I witnessed a customer in my local supermarket forcing a sales assistant to scan their items on the self-checkout as it's not the customer's job. Are they right or just plain rude? But if there's a self-checkout, then that's there for a reason, isn't it?
So the self can check out.
Yeah, well, that's what hence the clues in the name. But is it just a power thing? Is that what's going on there?
Imagine that your life had got to a point you had no control, that you walked into a Tesco's Extra and thought, you know what? I'm going to get that shop assistant to scan through my aubergine.
They've got to do that. They've got to earn their £8.40 an hour.
Yeah. There was something recently about somebody who had done their scanning, but then someone at the door was then checking people's receipts.
Yes.
And the woman, I do think, quite rightly, went, I've scanned it, I've done your job, I'm not standing here for you to check my receipt.
Yeah, fair enough.
I mean, if you don't trust me to do the job, do you know what I mean? So,
yeah.
In my local Sainsbury's, you have to scan the receipt to get out on a infrared scanner.
Do you want me to tell you the best scam? And I've never tried it, but I'd love to know if it works.
Go on.
If you're all brave enough. It's called buy one, get one free. So you go and buy all your groceries, and you take your receipt, and then you hand it immediately to somebody outside who goes in and buys all the same goods that are on that receipt and walks out with nothing, all of it without paying.
That is outrageous, Jojo. Can I just say?
It's not an applause.
I've never had the guts to try it, but I reckon it would work, don't you?
You know it's live, Jojo, don't you?
Yeah.
Jojo, your criminal tips just got a round of applause from the audience. That does not look good on us. That does not reflect well.
No, sorry.
And next week, how to make a bomb. For God's sake. All right, we've just got time for one more dilemma. I can't get over that. This comes from Tara. Tara says, I can't get a table for a local pub for a roast this evening. Should I tell them it's my birthday with hopes they will find a table for me? Again, you're all liars. Everyone's lying and trying to cheat.
Cheat the system, It's like people that go and say it's their birthday when it's not, and they get a cake and they get a drink. And,
But if the
you ever done that?
No, I actually haven't. Genuinely, I'm kind of one of the most...
Too busy figuring out supermarket scams.
I'd love to do it. I really want to try it. Just I couldn't, because I would feel guilty.
Advice then for Tara,
I wonder if supermarket...
If it's full, it doesn't matter if it's your birthday or not, isn't it? There isn't a special reserved area for people who are born on that day.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
So my advice for Tara is find somewhere else to eat, you Wally.
But also, if they're full, they're full. You can't make space out of nothing.
No, exactly. I think bottom line, just honesty. Let's just go for honesty.
Yeah, why not?
Honesty and staying within the law, Jojo.
If in doubt, tell the truth.
If in doubt, tell the truth. There we go.
Until
what
you get
a lovely...
and then no
that's
comment.
the moral of the show. Thank you for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when civil servants took charge of Britain, Oxford Dons were called agents of white domination, and young lefties started celebrating the virtues of Osama bin Laden. Thanks to my panel, Jojo Sutherland and Paul Cox, and to all of my guests this evening. And if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our wonderful audience, you can easily do that. Just go to the website address on the screen at the moment, www.sroaudiences.com, and come along. And stay tuned for the Dinosaur Hour with John Cleese. That's next. He's on tonight with Rob Schneider. And don't forget that Headliners is on at 11. See you later.
Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. We're looking ahead to the new working week. It's going to be a bit of a grey and damp start out there. For some of us, it will turn dry during the middle part of the week, but then a good deal colder as we head towards next weekend. Back to the here and now, we've still got this area of low pressure close by. Still got some tightly packed ice bars down towards the south, so indicating another blustery night. Also keep an eye on this area of rain as it moves across parts of South Wales and southwest England. Could turn quite squally for a time as that moves through. Elsewhere, a good deal of cloud around, clearest of the skies over towards the east, but for most, as we start Monday morning, we start off on a fairly mild note. So that band of rain will continue to clear towards France as we go in the course of the morning, so maybe a bit of a wet commute for some of us, but for many it's going to be a bit of a grey day with some further outbreaks of rain. It may well turn briefly sunnier for a time across parts of the Midlands and the East Anglia, but a lot of us, it's not going to be the most inspiring of starts to the new week. But it will still be fairly mild, a little bit cooler than it has been over the weekend, thanks to a bit more of a northerly wind. And then going into Tuesday, still on the cloudy side across a good chunk of England and Wales with some further outbreaks of rain across the east. It does cheer up for a time across Northern Ireland and Scotland with some sunnier spells here, but then later on, some further cloud and outbreaks of rain moves in across the far northwest of Scotland. Middle of the week, drier and brighter in the south.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.